Greetings, Dan, and welcome back to my Let's Learn for Tales of Maj'Eyal. So, at this point in the game, my Thaloran Shadowblade has made all the way through what can really be considered the early game of Tales of Maj'Eyal. The early game is basically all the starter dungeons and basically that trap quest with the unknown tunnels and the assassin lord and all his like little thief friends and killing the cursed guy in the lumberjack village. So, at this point, you basically have entered the start of the mid-game, and I figured at this point it'd be a good time to start telling you a little bit about stats and talent points and all that stuff, because I haven't really gone into detail with it yet. I've just mostly been going, just sort of showing you the ropes of sort of how to get through the starter dungeons more than anything else. At this point, then, I'll basically tell you a little bit about what I was doing so far. As you probably recall from the last episodes, I basically started by maxing out Dual Strike real quick, and I dropped a point in Flurry. I also dropped a point in Rush, a point in Dirty Fighting, a point in Left Alley as I was always there, and the point that was in Shadow Com as well. We also have 2 more points in Shadow Cunning and Shadow Feed, and I'll tell you that when I get my next level at level 12, we'll probably get a point here in Teleport. But we also have Phase Door maxed out, and we have a few points all the way up to Piercing Sight here. And we all have an extra point in, Dagger Master here, and a couple in Combat Accuracy, and up here in Unshackled. So, what's been going on, more or less, is that how I'd like to build my character to begin with is to sort of plan them out so that they can survive the early game. I find in the early game that the best thing that you can do to sort of defend yourself is just to have a really good offense along with like very powerful infusions like the ones that I bought down here. So, what I really like to do, I like to basically max out Dual Strike here because this attack is going to be basically your main attack for a long time in the game. It basically has the advantage of stunning targets for 7 turns, and it does a lot of damage by itself. It's actually very comparable to the Flurry here. The thing about Dual Strike is that in the early game on bosses, this can basically shut them down, so you can rip through them, as like you saw the Assassin Lord and the various other bosses I killed. And well, that's pretty much the best way of defending yourself, to shut down the enemy so they can't hurt you, the key ones, and you're good. Some players will note that what they'll probably do, they probably max out dual weapon training as fast as possible and dual weapon defense, and they get Blur Sight down here. The point of doing that is that basically gives their characters a lot of passive ability, specifically an ability to avoid being hit. Defense is a stat that what it does is it basically measures up against an opponent's accuracy, and if your defense is much better than the opponent's accuracy, you basically completely dodge whatever attacks they fire or try and hit you with. So long as they aren't like a spell or an area effect type of attack. So that's like one of the strategies our players would do. But for the most part, what my strategy was, I just go for a strong offense at the beginning, and then we'll go after this defensive skill and Blur Sight and all that right after we basically get that done. So in many ways, Tales of Maj'Eyal is a game of planning. And from the very start, when you build your character, you're basically planning how you're going to build up your character and how he's going to progress in the game. So they sort of give you a sort of idea what to expect of this character. I'm going to try to pick up Teleport here, as I've already stated, with my next level. And I'm basically going to try and build up Dagger Mastery and Combat Accuracy. I'll drop a point in Armor Training, and Thick Skin where possible, and also in the other Thaloran racials up here. On the class side, we're going to basically look to get these talents up and running, like Whirlwind, Sweep. I may max out Flurry sooner than later, or just may leave that one for now. We'll also, as a service to go with all the other players do, we'll basically max out Dual Weapon Defense to bring up our defensive stat, and we'll also aim to get Blur Sight as well. And of course, we're basically going to run with Shadow Combat for now, as it is with the new ability to regenerate mana from Shadow Feed, so I don't have to use the Mana Surge Ruin that I got rid of a few episodes ago, or a couple episodes ago. So the basic point of what I'm sort of going to be building my character to do initially, at the start, I was basically just building it so it could defend itself and get itself out of trouble. And I did it by having a good, strong offense, and at this point, I'll also have a good couple of escape options as well. Next thing I'm going to do is basically make it so that it can deal with hidden foes, but also be able to defend itself against attacks. So with a strong enough defensive stat on the Shadowblade, I will be able to avoid attacks when they come at me. Now, that's basically all on the talent side. Over on here is like the stats. So at the beginning of the game, I told you that the Shadowblade invests in dexterity, in magic, and in cunning. Dexterity governs your ability to use like your attack talents and other stuff like up here. But outside of that, it's also very important for the stat itself. If you hover over dexterity here, you'll see that the stat gives you defense, range defense, accuracy, and the ability to shrug off critical chance. What that's telling you is basically every time I put stat points inside dexterity, it actually increases the defensive capabilities of my character to avoid hits, in conjunction with like the dual weapon defense and like blur sight and whatever else of defensive abilities you have available. It'll also increase my ability to get higher accuracy, and accuracy plays a role in such skills such as the stun chance for dual strike or for dirty fighting, which will effectively make those stun chances a whole lot better. It also plays into some other stuff as well, such as for let's see here, precise strikes will run off your dexterity stat, and that'll basically, at a cost of reducing your attack speed, give you a higher critical chance if that's what you're going for in your character. And stuff like well, there's some other stuff that also builds up the dexterity stat. Here's like one that basically increases your dexterity, armor penetration. That basically lets you get by the armor stat. The armor stat's another type of defensive stat that is running in this game. What armor does, as you can probably guess, it basically absorbs damage from attacks. Armor penetration is how you can get by it, so basically you can get to the fleshy good bits underneath the armor. And yeah, so basically that's sort of like how these sort of stats run with the talents. But the stats themselves are very important, and the thing about dexterity here is that it's probably considered to be one of the best defensive stats you can get. The other defensive stat is Constitution. Most players don't think much of Constitution because the net gains from this getting more health and physical save aren't that great compared to, say, getting defense. And there's just better stuff you can probably do with your stat points and put them in Constitution usually, even if you care about defense to begin with. So that's basically a little bit about the dexterity stat. We're going to be increasing dexterity stat quite a bit from here on in. I'll probably maybe increase a little bit in cunning, just so I can like get a little bit in piercing sight. But we already have apparently quite a few cunning items available, boosting up our cunning stat quite a bit, so that should be too much of an issue. Outside of that, cunning can be useful for other stuff as well. I might want to get, like for example, cripple, maybe online kind of sooner than later. Cripple's a nice other defensive type of offensive ability you can use. Basically does high damage on a target, but also slows down their ability to attack you. So in conjunction with lowering your damage, such as dual strike, that's very useful in sort of protecting yourself by preventing the opponent from damaging you. Other stuff can also be very useful, such as possibly getting Shadow Step early. That's another like a rush type ability, like this one here, that will let me get to the opponent real quick within a range of 6 and hit him and daze him basically for a lot of darkness damage. So that's something I could possibly go for with the high enough cunning. I'll note that right now, by the way, that you need level 12 to get that, so I might get that maybe next level, but we'll see what I do. And yeah, for the most part, that's what cunning is like used for in talents. For the cunning stat itself, as you can see, the stat gives critical chance, mental save, and mind power. Now, mental save is kind of important. It basically lets you avoid getting confused or silenced, and those detrimental effects can be kind of bad to my character. But the main duty of what cunning does actually increases your critical chance. And critical chance basically means that you do better damage when you land a critical. Criticals are one of the best ways to increase damage in the late game, and a lot of characters will do it. The Shadowblade in particular, though, has actual stats that not only boost up the critical hit in conjunction with this, but lethality actually makes it so when your critical hits actually hit, you actually do a lot more damage with them. So it's a really, really great stat to have invested in, and it'll be one I'll be looking at quite a bit. Now, there's also magic, and magic governs your ability to basically get higher spell save and more spell power, and also the ability to unlock some of these talents down here. And that'll probably be important for Blur Sight later on. I'm probably not going to invest in magic all that much just initially. I tend to play a much more, specialized role in this dexterity and cunning. It's very much like the rogue build, so to speak, except that I'll eventually be able to get magic later on. The thing about the Shadowblade is that it's very stat dependent in a whole lot of stuff because, it has dexterity, magic, and cunning affecting so many talents. I find that what's best is just trying to pick one of the talents over the other. In this case, I'm going to focus heavily on dexterity for the most part to try and boost up my defensive abilities and also to get more accuracy and stuff like that for stunning and whatever else I might choose. And then later on, we'll just push into building up our magic as well. So that's just sort of like an idea of what we're going to do with like the stats and the talent points for this character. And I'll note, by the way, you don't have to build your character like me. You could follow like other players and just build like a sort of like highly defensive build from the start, and then go with that. I'll also note, by the way, this is the last note, that there's also locked characters down here, locked categories down here. We can unlock those with like a category points at like 20 and 36 from this point on, as well as from other sources as well that I won't tell you about until we get to them. I might do that. We might, for example, unlock Temporal, so I can get such as the ability to use Congeal Time. That's another way to basically that decreases the target's global speed. And in conjunction with like Cripple up here, that could basically slow them down to the point where they're going to be not be able to do anything for several attacks while I hit them in the process. There's also stuff like Time Shield and Time Piercing and SSC, so we'll look at that when we get to it as well. The other categories, they're not really as good as they're not something I'll be going for on this character. Stealth is something that what it does is you basically can enter stealth, and the enemies can't notice you sometimes, or if they do notice you, they may not know where you are, and that can lead to them just firing attacks in the wrong places, or if you actually get into melee range and attack them, they're taking a lot of damage from you. Stuff like Ambush. This used to be considered a very, very powerful category for the Shadowblade, but recently some of the talents in it got nerfed. Ambuscade, for example, was an example of a very powerful talent. What it did is it lets you basically create a shadow of yourself, and you can control it to basically damage your enemies. Sadly, though, they sort of changed it so that it no longer works outside of your sight range of your character. It used to be you could just take it out for a spin, it's basically attack wherever stuff was, but they sort of changed it so that you don't have that much control over it anymore. It's still very useful, but it's not my type of style. There's also Shadow Veil in here. That's something that I'm actually kind of, shall we say, I'm not too interested in how it works. Basically, how it works, you lose control of your character, but you become like a mad killing machine in the process until like it uses up its duration. But we'll basically ignore stealth and ambush on this build. We'll probably pick up temporal very soon, but for now we'll just ignore it. So that's basically about category points on top of the talent points there. Now I'll note that at this point, I sort of was hinting on about like my lack of good daggers and stuff like that. For the most part, we did pick up a sort of decent dagger here with like Insidious Poison. That can sort of stop opponents from healing themselves, which can be kind of useful. But the rest of the gear is kind of lacking. For example, I've got this like white named boots, and I've only got this spiked leather armor. I'd rather replace those as soon as possible, where possible, and we're in Last Hope, and this is a good place to do it. So I built up a little bit of money initially from the initial dungeons, and probably the first thing you do is check infusions in ruin shops, then check armor to do that. So here's the infusion shop in Last Hope, and this is probably your last chance if you've checked Anglewin and all the other places and didn't find infusions there of use for your character to find a good one. It looks like, sadly, we're not going to find a good wild infusion for replacing one of these down here, sadly, but oh well. This is actually a very decent wild infusion to use for a long-term game, just because it's got a low cooldown, so it's not really a really bad wild infusion. So I won't really worry so much about the wild infusions. I'm also pretty happy with the regeneration runes I picked up from the shops and all that, so we're not in too bad a spot for regeneration runes. Though something like this, the healing infusion of the duelist, that's got a fairly long cooldown. But if that had a decent cooldown, like say cooldown of 7, that could be a really decent paired up infusion to use with one of the regeneration infusions down there. Now, what I was really looking for was actually the movement infusion. And the movement infusions are basically, they were recently nerfed in the recent updates to this game, but they're still probably the best infusion that your character can have for escaping. What move infusions do, they basically make you so when you use the infusion, you basically move faster. As you can see, basically this one boosts your speed up to 400% for 5 turns, or for 1 turn, and then you also get stuns, dazes, and pinning effects prevention for 5 turns after that. So what the thing about movement infusions do, basically they can let you tactically position your character, run away, or even go on offensive with the ability just to run up to an opponent. And many characters use these movement infusions quite a lot for the past while of this game before they were recently nerfed. So this one right here, it's not terrible. 400% speed is actually, fairly decent, I guess, for a starting movement infusion, but I'd rather look for possibly a better one where possible. So we'll try and hold off on buying that and hopefully find one in one of the dungeons. There's also a ruin shop in here in Last Hope, and that's also another good place to look for stuff. There's a shielding rune in here that scales with Duelist, and that's actually worth considering, actually. This is it's got a fairly decent cooldown. It scares with dexterity stat, which is going to be pumping soon, so we're going to buy this. And I'm actually going to put this shielding rune on top of my one of my regeneration runes down here. So I'll use it on top of this one right here. Now, how shielding runes work, they'll actually give me a damage shield, and these are sort of a preemptive defense. The regeneration rune is sort of restoring hit points that you lost from enemies during a fight, but you can actually use the shielding rune to actually preemptively prevent enemies from damaging you. So I'll just activate it. What this does is it puts a damage shield around you for the term, whatever terms it is. In this case, this one lasts for 5 turns. It says 6 here, but whatever. That's because I'm, I guess, moving a little bit fast. Basically, the target's surrounded by a magical shield, and it will absorb 140 damage before it crumbles. Any damage I take will go to the shield while it's in effect. So opponents won't be able to damage me until they get through that shield. So if they did like a 200 damage attack, 140 of that damage would go to the shield, and 60 would go from me. If they did less than that, then they just take the damage from the shield and it'd still be up. So that's a very cool rune to get, and that's basically a look at our infusions and other usable type of items for the next little while. I'll eventually want to replace one of these wild infusions with a movement infusion, or basically a movement infusion, or perhaps something else in the meantime. But for now, we'll basically keep the infusions and runes down here as is. I'll note, by the way, there's also a library in here if you want lore, but I don't really care about lore. And we've already seen Ungrol, and he's basically already been, we've already picked up the alchemist potions from him. There's also other shops down here, such as an axe cutter for axe people. There's a sword shop, a sling shop. And if you come here, you can buy ranged implements if you are a ranged character. I might do that in this character to sort of demonstrate slings later on, but hopefully I plan to find a better one before then. There's a letter shop here. I might go in here to possibly pick up one of these items down here. Maybe this one. You'll note, by the way, that these items require strength. You do need a little bit of minimum strength on characters, so if you don't get that from items, you might see me just boost up my strength stat a little bit, but it's something I'd rather avoid. It's also a heavy armor shop here. I probably won't stay, be looking at this very much, but shops like this. But you could find stuff like grounding dwarf helmets once you have your armor training talent unlocked. I honestly don't, so none of this is really useful to me. Doesn't look like I'll be coming back there anytime soon either. Now, I'll note, by the way, that these shops, they're more or less only useful at the beginning of the game. You'll find that as the game progresses, the items in these shops don't update or anything, don't get better. So this is the only time you'll really be buying any suitable items to use on your character. Those are more or less alchemist type of cloaks, but they're also got a little bit of resistances and stuff on, which makes them kind of cool. But probably won't be going to them. Now, there's also Urfel's shop over here. He's the merchant who I rescued. Hopefully he has something good, but for the most part, let's see, that's an arcane disrupting item, so I can't use that. And the other stuff is just more or less not as good as it is. So sadly, we're not finding a whole lot of good items, and this sometimes happens in the game. You'll find just a lack of items they can possibly use in your character. I think I was thinking about buying this one, perhaps, this Blindness Immune Ring that gives 20% blindness and other stuff. But we know what, we're actually doing quite well with our ruins, or rings better. These rings that I found, they actually give us high confusion immunity. This is actually very noticeably useful to use on a character. Alright, so I was actually looking for boots. So let's see if these guys have any boots. I didn't really check for boots. This guy doesn't have any boots items, so to speak of. The leather shop doesn't have... Oh, yes, they do. They have a bit of boots. So here's an example where I'm able to buy at least something of use from these shops. This gives me a bit more defense and lightning resistance. This gives me a bit of physical save, more mental save, and lets me disengage from targets if I want. Plus it boosts a lot of useful stats. I think we'll buy these boots for now for one reason. I can't wear these because... oh yes, I can wear those. Oh, that's cool. But I'm going to use these boosts anyways, just because they are a purple item and have a lot of useful stuff for my character. So we'll use that to boost up my character and get a little bit stronger. Apparently I still have some stuff to sell. We'll actually do that, I guess. Sell off the useless items like these that I won't be using. Now, it sadly occurred to me, but I actually sold off the pickaxes that have all the strength stat on them, so that's kind of a sad thing that I sort of did. I actually meant to save those in case, I need them for the strength boost, but hopefully we'll find more pickaxes as we progress in the game. And that's pretty much it for items. I mean, I don't really have anything to really place this with. I actually don't think this is too bad an item right here, just grounding roughly our belt, because it gives a little bit of physical save along with lightning resistant temporal for now, so that's not terrible. And the other stuff is also kind of good for the moment as well. So that sort of just leads on to where my character is going to be for now. I will want to, find better items, but we'll have to basically rely on the dungeons to do so. And that'll basically be it for sort of developing our character initially right now. So I guess at this point, I didn't really mean to make this episode anything more than just a talk about character development and sort of preparing your character for the rest of the game. And before we do anything, I'm going to move this over to here. Basically, when you have an item that has like a special thing on it, you can use it to basically use the item to like have an active ability. In this case, it's got disengage, which is a target ability. If I go to say this guy and disengage from him, you'll basically jump away from your target. It's basically what the giant rabbits were doing when we saw them in like the past episodes. They basically jump away from me because they're using disengage here to get away. You also saw it from the halfling in the arena when he was basically trying to get away so he could get more shots on me with his little sling and shots. Alright, so that's basically it then for this episode. Next time we'll actually sort of jump into some of the optional dungeons, just because I like to do those first. And after that, we'll try and progress a little bit into the actual second tier dungeons, which sort of form the core of the mid-game. For now, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.